Live from the Breaking News and Weather Authority, this is WEAU 13 News at 10.
I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol.
So we have folks entering the rotunda. Just be prepared. Stay calm.
They want us down.
And we'll stand in recess until the call of the chair.
To those who wreaked havoc in our Capitol today, you did not win. Violence never wins.
Today, lawmakers, staff members, and more inside the U.S. Capitol were hiding under tables, hunkered in lockdowns, seeing the fruits of this country's divisions up close. This began as Congress took up the certification of President-elect Joe Biden's victory. President Trump appeared at a rally this morning of his supporters across the street from the White House. From there, the rally crowd moved up the mall and to the Capitol building. Authorities attempted to push back the crowd, but the mob entered the building and made their way to the House and the Senate chambers. One woman was shot and killed inside the Capitol. Washington's mayor instituted an evening curfew in an attempt to contain the violence. President Trump and President-elect Biden addressed this unprecedented set of events.
You have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel. But go home and go home in peace.
Let me be very clear. The scenes of chaos at the Capitol do not reflect a true America, do not represent who we are. What we're seeing are a small number of extremists dedicated to lawlessness. This is not dissent. It's disorder. It's chaos. It borders on sedition. And it must end now.
Members of the media, including those with WEAU's Washington, D.C. bureau, also needed to take extra precautions in staying safe today. For more reaction on what happened at the nation's capital, here's WEAU's Bob Gallagher.
Congress's effort to count electoral votes that gave President-elect Joe Biden his election victory quickly turned to chaos and violence today after pro-Trump protesters stormed the Capitol. Peter Zampa from our Washington, D.C. bureau joined us now with more on the day's disturbing events at the U.S. Capitol. Peter.
Well, Bob, let me start by saying this. We wish we could be on our roof right now where that live shot is currently. That's the U.S. Capitol. Our roof has that shot up. We're not allowed up on our roof right now. We were told to come down for safety reasons. We are only blocks away from the U.S. Capitol, where obviously chaos descended and went inside the halls of Congress, the powerful halls, the beacon of democracy inside of Congress. Now, of course, lawmakers were deliberating these electoral votes today. The first objection had been made to the state of Arizona's slate, and since then we've been just flowing images of chaos throughout this city. Sirens, now the soundtrack here on Capitol Hill throughout the night, throughout the afternoon. Curfew in Washington, D.C. tonight at 6 p.m. until the wee hours of the morning. So you can see where the day started and where it got to, all because of this Trump rally, this pro-Trump rally that made its way inside the United States Capitol. Lawmakers having to lock down. We've been hearing from them on social media all day. Some of them truly shaken. You would think so, given that this is their place of work and they were all of a sudden forced to shelter in place, put on gas masks in certain situations. A person died in their place of work today. The president took hours to weigh in and tell these protesters to go home. He's still not yet condemned the violence that was brought to the halls of the U.S. Capitol. He even in subsequent tweets after telling them to go home seemed to justify the acts that took place today. Now, there are layers of security inside this building, and these people obviously did not have to adhere to them. They just broke through lines of law enforcement to get next to the hall, the chambers of Congress that hold these lawmakers where they were trying to carry out their constitutional duty, Bob.
And Peter, former President George W. Bush called today an insurrection at the Capitol. You mentioned you're just a couple blocks from the Capitol. Today, the first time since 1812 that the Capitol was breached. What are your thoughts today about the security around the Capitol?
Well, it's incredible. It's a place where the most powerful people in the world go to work every day. You would think that the security would be able to handle certain things, and it does. There's very strict security on Capitol Hill. We go through it every single day and every single door to get into that building and the buildings surrounding it as well. It's difficult to do, and yet they had enough people today to overcome this line of law enforcement, these Capitol police officers. They can only handle so much, and today it was clearly just a bit too much to handle, despite the massive security measures they have on Capitol Hill.
Peter Zampa, thank you so much for your time this evening. To you and your colleagues, please be safe. Thank you. Wisconsin lawmakers, Democrat Congressman Ron Kind and Republican Mike Gallagher condemned today's protest, urging the president to call off the mob and put an end to the rioting.
No one likes to lose an election, but one of the hallmarks and one of the strengths of our democracy for 244 years has been the peaceful transfer of power. And this current president has cast doubt on that now and encouraged the type of violence that we're seeing on the street in the streets of Washington. And it's a shameful exercise, but unfortunately, over the last 4 years, we've become numb to outrageous behavior by the President of the United States. And so in a way, this is not unexpected.
This is the cost of countenancing an effort by Congress to overturn the election and telling thousands of people that there is a legitimate shot of overturning the election today, even though you know that is not true. We have got to stop this. Mr. President, you have got to stop this. You are the only person who can call this off.
Wisconsin Democrats and Republicans are condemning today's violence on Capitol Hill. WEAU's Carla Rogner shares how community members and local politicians are reacting to today's events.
Wednesday's events in Washington, D.C. were felt across the country, including here in the Chippewa Valley.
Very shocking.
Just kind of disappointing.
I don't think violence is the answer, obviously.
The violence denounced from both sides of the aisle.
So I think this is a moment of reflection for our leadership of this country, of what type of democracy we want, what type of country we're going to have, whether it's going to be one that respects the Constitution, the rule of law, or endless political conflict, and the type of hooliganism that we're seeing on the streets of our nation's capital today.
Republican Representative Tom Tiffany says he still plans to challenge the Electoral College votes from 6 states, but he did not expect anything like this to happen.
And we really do need elected leaders to stand up, as well as law enforcement, to say, that's enough of this. I don't care what side of the political aisle you come from. Violence is never okay.
However, Congressman Ron Kind says this kind of response was expected.
But I asked my colleagues, who for months now have spread lies about the integrity of the ballot box, unfounded accusations, lacking any evidence or facts about voter fraud in this election, what did they expect the reaction to be?
It's shameful, it's appalling. This is nothing less than an attempted coup on our democracy.
Democrat Jody Emerson calls it a sad day for America.
I understand people are upset when they lose elections, but votes have been counted, they've been recounted.
In a joint statement, Wisconsin Republican senators say in part, "We cannot abide by this assault on our republic. Violence, no matter the political affiliation or motive, has no place in our system of government and should not be tolerated." Congressman Kind says he is looking forward to continuing with business as usual.
And we are going to work until this is done. And at the end of the process, I'm confident that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be declared the incoming president and vice president of the United States.
Now Democrats are calling on the president to use his voice and ask his supporters for peace. In Eau Claire, Carla Rogner, WEAU 13 News.
Let's go live to the U.S. Capitol, where the House and the Senate have reconvened more than 6 hours after mobs forced those lawmakers to flee. Scores of Republican representatives and 13 GOP senators planned to object to the electoral votes of perhaps 6 states. Now, multiple Republican senators have reversed course and say they won't object to congressional certification of President-elect Joe Biden's victory. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says Congress will not be deterred in confirming the results. Senate Democratic Leader Chuck Schumer says President Trump, quote, bears a great deal of the blame, adding today's events did not happen spontaneously. An Eau Claire man is walking and running more than 1,200 miles in memory of a young girl he never had the chance to meet. Josh Walworth heard about Sophie Sanchez and her battle with cancer on the news. Her story moved him and made him want to make a difference. Walworth created Sophie's Miracle Miles to raise money for the hospital where Sophie received treatment.
I have 3 kids, and I've had two people in my family, my grandfather and my aunt. They both passed away from cancer. So I guess just seeing what they went through and then seeing my kids, it just all jumbled together.
The full version of this story was originally scheduled to air today. However, since our 6 p.m. newscast was preempted, you can now see the full story tomorrow on WEAU 13 News at 6.
Not a lot of change in our weather today as we saw more freezing fog and gray skies, as well as temperatures that are overall above average, especially in the evening where we typically would see these temperatures around this time of night falling into the teens and even single digits. But we sit at 23 right now, and you can see again, not a lot has changed as that fog sits outside here on our WEAU Skycam network from the station. We have a dense fog advisory once again, not for as many places as yesterday, but in our eastern counties down towards the Cooley region, there is that chance for fog to limit visibility, and we are actually seeing fog limiting visibility across other places in western Wisconsin as well. May not be as dense as it was, but certainly something to just be aware of tonight. And it's tomorrow morning, a chance that fog sticks around with temperatures in the 20s. I'll have a longer update coming up.
Later in Sports Scene 13, the Bucks are back home tonight taking on the Pistons. Later, preserving your identity online even after you've passed away is one company's goal to help grieving families. Up next, the latest COVID-19 figures, as well as a call for a much-needed resource during this pandemic.
You're watching WEAU 13 News with Bob Gallagher, Danielle Wagner, meteorologist Darren Meyer, and sports with Justice Cleveland. This is WEAU 13 News at 10.